In the 21st century, the world seemed to have passed the period of great wars. But simmering tensions between Russia and Ukraine have turned the region into a global focus. On February 24, 2022, the world was shocked when Russia launched a full-scale attack. Bombs boomed, missiles tore through the sky. War returned to Europe after nearly 8 decades.
We're seeing aggressive movements here.
We need to consider a counteroffensive in the north.
This is not just a border conflict, but a battle where great powers confront each other, shaping the world order. But beneath the political calculations, millions of people are suffering loss and pain. Is this the war of the 21st century? Let's find out. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. An empire disintegrated, opening a period of uncertainty for the entire region. Ukraine declared independence from Moscow. A new nation was born in the heart of Europe. The country enjoys a strategic location, bordering Russia to the east and Europe to the west. In Russia's eyes, Ukraine is more than just a neighbor. It is part of its historical sphere of influence. But Ukraine is increasingly moving closer to the west, seeking to join NATO and the European Union. In 2014, the situation exploded. Russia sent troops to annex the Crimean Peninsula, causing global shock. Kyiv fell into turmoil. Protests and street violence broke out, adding to the chaos. In the east, Russian-backed separatists have turned Donetsk and Luhansk into battlefields. Hundreds of thousands of civilians lost their homes. They had to leave their homeland in despair and grief. The West imposed sanctions on Russia, but tensions have not cooled down. Ukraine is increasingly open about its desire to join NATO, seeing it as a shield to protect the country. For Moscow, NATO's eastward expansion is like a knife edge on the border. In Putin's eyes, this is a strategic danger, an unacceptable threat. The Kremlin is beefing up its military. Tanks, missiles, and troops are ready to move. In early 2022, more than 100,000 Russian troops gathered near the Ukrainian border. Satellite images show huge convoys of military vehicles stretching for dozens of kilometers. Global media coverage was overwhelming. The threat of war loomed over Europe. In Kyiv, soldiers and civilians train, preparing for an inevitable conflict. On the night of February 24, 2022, Putin announced the launch of a special military operation. At dawn, rockets rained down, Russian tanks poured across the border, and the war officially began. Sirens blared, people rushed to the shelters, holding their children in fear.
It's gonna be okay.
That was the trigger that ignited the biggest war in Europe since World War II. On February 24, 2022, Russia launched an attack from multiple directions, north, east, and south of Ukraine. Huge military convoys entered Ukrainian territory, stretching for dozens of kilometers. The first night, a series of missiles were fired at Ukrainian military bases and airports. The capital Kyiv shook with sirens. People panicked and ran to shelters. The primary target was Kyiv. Russian forces quickly closed in on the capital. But the Ukrainian army and people built barricades, determined to defend every street. In the suburbs, anti-tank missile ambushes inflicted heavy damage on the Russian convoy. Hundreds of Russian tanks and armored vehicles were left behind, marking the failure of the plan for a quick attack. Civilians often joined the fight, making petrol bombs, becoming symbols of resistance. Meanwhile,
We will
the West
continue to
launched
provide
emergency
support.
military aid packages for Ukraine.
We must act decisively and swiftly.
A Russian convoy of more than 60 kilometers north of Kyiv was heavily destroyed. The plan to quickly capture Kyiv fails. Ukraine holds the capital under terrible pressure. After the defeat in Kyiv, Russia withdrew its troops, focusing on eastern and southern Ukraine. Mariupol became a symbol of pain, almost leveled after months of fighting. At the Azovstal steel plant, Ukrainian soldiers held out to the end under harsh conditions. Severodonetsk and Lysychansk fell one after another. Russia expanded its control over the Donbas region. The Battle of Bakhmut lasted for months and is considered one of the fiercest. With the support of Western weapons such as HIMARS, Ukraine began to counterattack. The greatest success was the liberation of Kherson, an important city in the south. The aid packages are getting bigger and bigger, turning Ukraine into a battleground between Russia and the West.
Step.
But the consequences of war were dire. Millions of people had to leave their homeland. Winter 2022, Russia focuses on destroying energy infrastructure, leaving Ukraine in the dark. The counter-offensives in the east were extremely fierce, with heavy losses on both sides. The entire battlefield turned into a maze of trenches, recreating the scene of World War I. Russia still maintained the advantage in artillery, continuously bombarding all fronts. However, Ukraine's spirit of resistance and surprise counterattacks kept the situation tense. Entering 2023, the war turned into a war of attrition with a dense defense system. Ukraine increased the use of drones, causing great damage to Russian convoys. HIMARS rocket artillery continues to be Ukraine's strategic weapon. Russia focused on strengthening its defense line, turning the front into an impregnable fortress. Ukraine hopes to change the situation with the appearance of F-16 fighter jets from the west. But in reality, both sides suffered heavy losses. No one had absolute advantage. The Ukrainian people still steadfastly survive amid devastation. The battle lines remained largely unchanged, despite the fierce fighting. Around the world, millions of people took to the streets to support Ukraine and call for peace.
We have
Diplomatic
always been open
efforts
to dialogue.
continued,
NATO's
but no
commitment to
solution to
security
end the
is
war was
unwavering.
found.
We will defend our sovereignty.
The Russia-Ukraine war has become a war of attrition, with no clear end in sight. The war prompted NATO to expand, including countries concerned about the threat from Russia. Finland and Sweden officially joined, changing the security balance in Europe. The US plays a central role,
The
both
ongoing
providing
cooperation
military
between
aid
our
and leading
nations
countermeasures
is
against
absolutely
Russia.
essential.
The West launched a series of sanctions, isolating Russia from the global economic system.
These actions are in direct response to the escalating
Europe cuts dependence on Russian energy, forced to find new supplies in the middle of a cold winter. Western weapons poured into Ukraine, from missiles, HIMARS artillery to modern tanks. NATO expansion became one of the biggest security changes in Europe in decades. The war immediately sent crude oil prices soaring, causing global repercussions. Gas becomes a strategic weapon, pushing Europe into a serious energy crisis. Financial markets plunged in response to the prolonged
The market is
uncertainty.
experiencing unprecedented volatility.
Ukraine, considered the breadbasket of Europe, suffered heavy damage in the war. Millions of tons of wheat are stuck in the Black Sea, sparking a global food crisis. Countries dependent on food imports from Ukraine, especially in Africa and the Middle East, are badly affected. The cost of living is rising everywhere, from Europe, America to developing countries. Geopolitically, Russia is increasingly moving closer to China, increasing economic and military cooperation. Iran provided drones, which became a key part of Russia's campaign. North Korea expressed support, further complicating the international situation. At the United Nations, the world is deeply divided, reflecting geopolitical polarization. Many countries in the global south
It is
choose a
one of
neutral
principled
stance,
neutrality
not siding with
and a
either
commitment
side.
to a multipolar world.
The world order is gradually shifting from unipolarity led by the US to a multipolar structure. A
We
new
stand
era of
united
strategic
against any
competition
aggression.
among major powers is emerging.
Our alliance is stronger than ever.
The global impact of the Russia-Ukraine war goes far beyond the battlefield, reshaping the 21st century. The future of the Russia-Ukraine war remains a mystery, making the whole world hold its breath and watch. Battlefields, diplomacy, and global public opinion all contribute to shaping the scenarios ahead. The first scenario is peace negotiations,
We must consider
where the
all
two
perspectives.
sides sit down to find a solution to
proceed
end
with
the
caution.
conflict. Handshakes can be hopeful, but they are still fragile and full of doubt. A ceasefire may be possible, but maintaining it is a huge challenge. However, observers say a short-term peace scenario remains unlikely. Scenario 2. The war drags on for years, becoming a conflict of attrition. Many experts call this a possible second Afghanistan for Russia in the 21st century. A long war means huge human and material losses for both sides. Ukraine continues to suffer dire consequences, while the world is plunged into turmoil. Scenario 3. Escalation of conflict, with the risk of increasingly dangerous weapons being used. There are concerns about the possibility of Russia using tactical nuclear weapons if the situation worsens. If the conflict spreads, the risk of a regional, even global, war cannot be ruled out. The major powers must race diplomatically to prevent nuclear disaster and dangerous escalation. No one can predict the outcome for sure, but one thing is clear: this war is emblematic of 21st century conflict. The Russia-Ukraine war not only changed Europe, but also shook the entire world order.
We
It
have to
rewrote
find a way to
global
make this
history,
work.
forcing major
The stakes are
powers
too
to
high
face
to fail.
life and death choices.
We will not let this continue.
The big question is, will humanity find the path to peace or continue the spiral of war? The future of war and peace remains an unsolved problem in the 21st century. This is Legends and Battles, where history is resurrected and the future is decoded. If you love history and war analysis, please like, subscribe, and share this video. Join us as we continue to explore the stories that shape humanity.